Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of light spinning from their mouths. Start looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow breathing in your blood. It's never enough. Upon the face of all mankind, our numbers up and the dead won't inside. Go along to get along, hypnotized by the siren song. The flames are empty and the crypts are cracking open. The horde's upon you and you stand there frozen, waiting for the word. Stand in line and wait. Don't follow the strings to find out who is pulling. Just drink your poison, keep on laughing and drooling, eating your own flesh. The master always knows what's worldwide genocide. The overlords of hungry parasites. They point the finger and the eagles fly. Raining fire, children die. Starving plague, paralyzed. While the bodies rotten, covered in fire. But no one wants to talk about it. Strings, no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol, in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve. Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. My name is Cliff. I'm joined by Tim. It is Sunday, May the 8th, 2022. Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there and all you mother lovers out there in internet land. We appreciate you joining us. If this is your first time with us, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If it's not your first time and you haven't hit subscribe, please do that. Hit the notification bell so you know when we're live every Sunday and Wednesday at 10 o'clock. It's good to have a reminder though, so that'll let you know when you can chime in. Hit us up in the chat. Email us at the ironmountainhour@gmail.com. Some of you have been doing that, and that's actually how we got the topic for tonight's show. This is episode 34, and a listener, viewer, Ben, hit me up by email and suggested that we talk about the mountain witches of Appalachia. I thought that was a pretty good suggestion by Ben there. I happen to be married to one who's considered a witch by a lot of people. So I thought that would make a good topic, and I think it's something a lot of people may be interested in, and something I'm interested in. And I have experienced some crazy things in the woods with that lady. I'll tell you what. I've mentioned some of it before, but there's just an electricity in the woods when I'm out there with her. So it's pretty crazy. But anyway, last week, another thing that led me to this topic was I did a clip from the show. We uploaded a clip to kind of give people something to share around, to give, some funny moments from the show to give an idea of what we were talking about. And we were talking about how Tim mentioned how Dolly Parton was being accused by some conspiracy theorists of being an Illuminati plant, and that her monarch programming was represented by the butterfly symbol. Mm-hmm. And I had remarked that there must be a lot of ladies out there with those tattoos on their lower backs that are also connected and protected by that. Well, thanks to that, I called the video Illuminati Tramp Stamps and Dolly Parton, and we got our first little fact check from YouTube there. They decided to throw us a little something from Encyclopedia Britannica about the Bavarian Illuminati on there. So I thought, well, hell, why not talk a little bit about the Bavarian Illuminati and the origins of that, and how, whether it's still around today. There's a lot of, we've been, I'm sure you have too, Tim, looking at this topic for many, many years and seen a lot of different angles on it. So, yeah, that's what we're going to get into tonight. What do you think about that?
I think, well, when you said the topic was the Illuminati, I was like, well, of course. But then, like, when you said the Bavarian, I was like, oh, you mean the actual Illuminati. I think, I don't know, people that have been online, they were in the conspiracies and really anything, just like alternative research in general. They would be, I guess, loosely familiar with the idea of the Illuminati, but not a lot of people are familiar that the word Illuminati is almost like the word Kleenex, when really what you mean is tissue. Mm-hmm. It might not be the name brand, but I know I do it all the time. When I say Illuminati, I just mean mysterious rich people from beyond my reach that control my life without me being able to do anything about it. That's what I mean.
The men pulling the strings, and women pulling the strings behind the curtain.
And that could be through legal means. That could be through very illegal means. I don't know. I don't literally know. I don't know if the same group from, was it 1500s?
Yeah, well, we're talking about the 1700s tonight, but I think the idea is that there's this cabal of people, bloodlines behind the scenes that have been.
Specifically the Bavarian one.
Well, yeah, the Bavarians, that's what we're going to get into tonight. But I think that what you're talking about is kind of Illuminati gets thrown around to represent.
Like a catch-all word of whoever's in control. That you're not aware they exist, maybe. I don't know.
And I think that goes back to the origins of the name Illuminati, which, means the enlightened ones, mm-hmm. or, the illuminated ones. Basically, that they had more knowledge. That's what they were referring to, is that they were more knowledgeable. And also, they used the symbol of the owl of Minerva. Minerva was the goddess of wisdom.
A lot of people think it's Molech, but
yeah,
I'm pretty... Well... It's also that duality thing, so they could be.
It could be both, yeah. Well, but we got the owl of Minerva. Let's look up Minerva. I had I was going to try to sign up for a cryptocurrency IPO, basically. I don't, the crypto version of an IPO, and I saw it was called Minerva, and I thought, well, that's very interesting. So. This seems like something that the movers and shakers, would name their cryptocurrency. So I thought, well, let me see about if I can get in on this and buy in a little bit of it on the beginning. And they ended up not allowing Americans to buy it. I think it was out of Europe. So anyway, I didn't get to do that. But
I guess when it's your own currency, you can shut it down and discriminate.
I guess you can, yeah. Who the heck cares?
Cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I mean, they said if we're not going to start it, we're going to start it with people in Europe. Though I don't know, I haven't checked in on it later. But Minerva was a virgin goddess of music, poetry, wisdom, commerce, weaving, and the crafts in Rome.
Okay.
She was the goddess of wisdom primarily, wisdom, justice, law, victory. And she was basically the Roman version of Athena, the Greek goddess. So she also is depicted often with a sacred owl known as the Owl of Minerva, which symbolized her association with wisdom and knowledge, and sometimes also with the snake and the olive tree she was associated. But she's been a symbol of the Bavarian Illuminati, and the owl is often was associated with a witchly familiar sometimes. So there's a couple little interesting tidbits that connect the topics of the Bavarian Illuminati, the Bohemian Grove, the mystics of the Bohemian Grove, and the mountain witches of Appalachia. And we see a lot of the same remedies and practices and the same descriptions of witches from old Germany back thousands of years ago, and also what we see in the Appalachian Mountains today. And we also see a lot of depictions of witches in English and American folklore that's been passed down, oral traditions. I mentioned the Jack Tales in several episodes of this show, and there's a lot of these oral traditions in there of witches and the different types of witches. I need to link in the description of this video. I meant to do it, but I forgot. Hey, Ben Crabtree just gave us a comment saying there's a giant statue of her in the Parthenon in Nashville, along with a giant snake. So yeah, there's a depiction of her with the snake, and we've mentioned that Parthenon in Nashville that they built for the World's Fair. Or no, it wasn't actually a World Fair. It was a, what was it? International World Expedition for the Centennial of the state. That's what it was. So it was, I think it was they had to move it back. Instead of being in 1896, it ended up being a little bit later than that. But anyway, they had this big expedition and the anniversary of the Centennial of the state, and they built the Parthenon for that celebration, and they built it as a temporary structure. But when they started to tear it down, the people of Nashville liked it so much that they actually rebuilt it as a permanent structure. And as Ben mentions, there's a giant statue of Minerva there in the Parthenon. Or could it be it's I mean, it's in Nashville. It's
anyway.
Oh, I don't know exactly where it is. It's on the Centennial grounds.
I noticed one of the weird things when I was in Nashville a couple weekends ago. What is it, the Nissan Stadium?
Mm-hmm.
If you look straight through the blast radius, you can it lines up perfectly with the Nissan Stadium, and then there's like a set of statues or something like that. It's like two statues shaking hands. It says the founding of Nashville or something like that. Probably just coincidence, happenstance, whatever. But I guess going back to my original point, that's much bigger blast than we thought. So I'm just curious what.
We're talking about that. Oh yeah.
The hole. That's what I was wondering where the hole blast was in
downtown Nashville from what was it, 2020, October 2020, late October 2020.
So where the Parthenon would be in relation to that explosion is what I was wondering.
Let's just look that up right quick. We can figure that out.
See if we can figure it out.
Let's see. Look it up on maps. Google's good for a lot of things sometimes here.
Okay, so
let's see.
What?
That's funny. It's next to Lake Watauga there. That's there's a Lake Watauga in Nashville. That I wasn't aware of that. Watauga means beautiful water, is what a lot of people say it means. That it was.
Is it Cherokee or?
Well, it was. I don't think it was Cherokee. I think it was a different set of Indians that lived in this area that called it that. But there's some dispute whether or not that is actually what it means. Okay. Let me zoom out a little bit here, Tim, so you can get an idea.
Figure out where it's at.
Near the Civil War Memorial, near the Hampton Inn downtown, McKissick Park, West End Park.
But that's. I did not know there was a Parthenon there.
Yeah, it's
new to me.
Oh yeah, it was over near the Frist Art Museum and the Honky Tonk Highway, the Musicians Hall of Fame, Hattie B's Hot Chicken, West Nashville. There's your good landmark to find it by.
No. Music Row would
there
be
you
the
go.
way to do it.
Music Row, right next to Music Row.
Yeah, so it is pretty close. Well, no, because the Nissan Center and all that stuff would be on the other side of the river.
Okay.
So,
I guess I should be showing this to people here.
Well, yeah. just
sorry, folks.
Just put your fingers poking and Tim's forehead sweating real close to the camera. But just basing it on my dumbassery here, I would think it would be over in this direction.
You're saying the stadium is?
I would think so, but we don't have to keep going on if you don't want to.
Okay.
I don't know if the whole city is based on ancient Egypt, you know? Well, not the whole
Athens,
thing, but a lot of Tennessee
Athens, yeah. Athens, Nashville was referred to as the Athens of the South.
Okay,
and then Memphis was the Egypt,
so
based on Memphis and
Mississippi, they're pretending is no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically the Nile of North America.
I wasn't aware that existed.
Wow. Yeah, I remember a kid in when I was in 8th grade. A kid he wrote a research paper on the 7 wonders of Tennessee, and you could tell he copied it out of somebody else copied it out of something else, and so he talked about the Parthenon, and I learned about it then. I was kind of always fascinated by then, but yeah.
Do you think? I know this is way off topic. Can they see that?
I've closed the screen capture now. Why do they?
Okay.
Do you want me to show it to
we can come back to it if you want to, but I would like to look at that image and then compare it to maybe the one that you would find in Paestum, but just because you can get really good pictures of it, there's not so many tourists and stuff in it. And then look at like the closeness, like what did they have to do to simulate that old Parthenon, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm sure that you said it was a World's Fair. They said that it would be like styrofoam.
It was like a centennial.
That's right.
Yeah.
They said it made a more permanent structure, so I'd like to know what that permanent structure is.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I mean, the original one was made of marble, I imagine. Let's see, what's it made out of? What is the Parthenon made of?
Well, you're going to get the one in, Nashville, Parthenon. There you go.
Let's see what Google tells us. It says brick, stone, structural reinforced concrete, and cast concrete aggregate.
Okay.
Took them 10 years to build it. They built it in 1921 to 1931.
Those columns up there, I guess, because they say the ones that you find in ancient Greece and places that they are one giant unit, and that's why they're so incredible. Versus if you look at these, I think they do them in sections and they pour a layer of concrete over it to make it look like they're seamless.
Pretty impressive either way, considering especially...
It is really impressive.
To think that the Greeks built that thousands of years ago
click on
without modern construction techniques.
Click on Paestum and see if you can see the difference.
Paestum.
Up there in the thing. It's a Paest, Paestum. It's a set of ruins there it is with the U. It's a set of ruins that's real similar to the famous ones.
Oh, okay.
But they're Italy, so nobody cares about them.
Right.
So.
And those are
but you can get like a lot of good pictures of them. But if you look any of them, really, look at the way they're just massive. That's my whole point. Like the way we try to simulate that. But
it's funny how there's all these different, you've got Apollyon, Apollo, you've got Minerva and Athena, you've got Zeus and what's the counterpart of Zeus? I mean, each
I'm not sure. There was a Diana in this particular one.
Diana, yeah, she's like similar to Semiramis from ancient Sumerian and Babylonian lore, and you also had Alma, I think was her name, who was very similar to Diana, and they're all represented in these, and they're also Columbia, the goddess Columbia, has a similarity to them.
There's big ass blocks up here.
And you also see in Minerva a similarity because she's very athletic, and those are giant.
And see the difference with this. This is Greek architecture, right? Mm-hmm. I know I'm just repeating everything we see.
It's in Roman, but it's Greek.
This is actually, it is Greek architecture. But if you go to modern day Rome and look at how they started, because they were replicating the Greeks, right? Mm-hmm. If you look at the way they did this, what they did, everything in Rome that is built by Romans is red brick, pretty much. It's red brick with concrete poured over it.
Oh, okay.
And that's where that's a lot of that where they get the Mason connection.
Okay.
To that's our full circle. I'm trying to get back.
Yeah,
to
well, we're going to be doing a lot of circling around. This episode's going to be a little bit everywhere.
Kept talking about there was a Greek connection to the word Illuminati, which is Lumus, which was like a secret club that the elites were invited into, which I think was like a mushroom trip. And then they think that the Roman Empire is essentially part of the Masons because they use so much brick.
And you also have the light bearer being represented in several different, cultures with Lucifer being a light bearer and the morning star and Venus, and you have a lot of different representations of this throughout lots of different cultures and history. So they kind of all seem to be really referring to the same thing and just have maybe different names for it. Because when you get into the counterparts, the Roman and Greek counterparts of all the gods, they're very, very similar. They're depicted very similarly. The names are very similar. Oh, is that right with Nordic too?
In a lot of ways they are very similar. And I'm not sure if it's because it's the same culture that was spread out, or if the archetypes are just so strong that we give them the same, because there's a lot of them. I learned the cruise ships because I love the tours that you can go because they show these pyramids and stuff. And everybody else is all skinny dipping and stuff. And the Mexican or whatever, I guess it'd be Mayan. They had a giant pantheon too. And the more you start learning about what they were, the only one I can give you the name of the Ishtar, which was like the god of suicide, which was like more like which you would think that would be like the ultimate emo god at first, but it was almost more of like an Odin reference. It was the person who was strong enough to go sacrifice himself, not just with because their version of suicide was not just killing yourself. The idea of going into battle was also
sacrificing yourself to win the battle.
Yeah, and at least that's what the tour guide told me.
Okay.
So, and I thought that was interesting because Odin killed himself for himself, you know what I'm saying? Like he hung himself. So there's a lot of sacrifice involved in a lot of these gods.
Well, to get into the topic first of the Appalachian granny witches, or the Appalachian witches, the mountain witches.
Well, the granny witches would be the good ones, right?
Yeah, there's a few different varieties of them. If you want to learn a little bit more about it, Donnie Lawless has a really good video. He's got a very soothing Appalachian drawl. I don't know if he's from North Carolina. Yeah, that's what he sounds like to me. But he's got some good videos on it. If you search the mountain witches or something like that and find Donnie Laws, he's got a lot of the topics that we talk about that have to do with Appalachia. He has some really good videos on, and I usually watch his videos before we do some of these things to see if he's got any information that I haven't come across yet. But the Appalachian witches, there was a few different kinds of them. You had your evil witches that are often depicted in stories, such as the Jack Tales, which we mentioned earlier tonight and in several episodes before, where the witch is out to do harm or to trick people into stealing from them, or they
them in a pie.
Eat children. That's another thing that they commonly do.
I think that's connected to vampirism.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to I think it's the Ukrainian one with the empty cabin. And they would just essentially honeypot people. They come by and check the cabin rather than go hunting.
Mm-hmm.
We'll leave a nice cabin in the woods. If people travelers come in to kind of like rest, we'll attack them in that little house.
Yeah.
And that's essentially kind of like the witch and Hansel and Gretel with what can kids not resist? Just candy, and so make a whole house of it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's in a couple of the Appalachian Jack Tales and in the Old English Jack Tales, there are stories where Jack comes across an empty house and is set upon by a witch in the middle of the night after he finds, there's one in which he goes to work.
I think a moth witch approaches.
Oh, you think he's going to make it? All right, that'd be all right. Our buddy Dustin has sounded like he has entered the building. We give him a shout when we started the show, and he fell asleep. But that's what happens when you work at 6 o'clock in the morning. That happens sometimes.
5 o'clock actually.
Oh, you started at 5 this morning? Oh gosh.
Yeah. Every day.
All right. Oh, I thought you started at 6. Well, welcome, Dustin, to the show. We're getting into Appalachian witches, and we're getting into the goddess Minerva, and we're getting into the Bavarian Illuminati and the Bohemian elite, and what connections may be between them, or what similarities, if not connections, there may be. So we're just kind of going to be a little bit all over the place. We started explaining a little bit about what Minerva was and what the idea of the Illuminati was, and now we're getting into the mountain witches of Appalachia. And we were talking about how there are different kinds of witches, starting with the evil witches that are often depicted in folk tales and that movies too. I mean, they've made their way into mainstream popular culture for many years now, with especially movies like the Bell Witch from Adams, Tennessee, and we were talking about how they have English stories and Appalachian stories about Jack Tales, where Jack runs into witches who are trying to eat children, or Tim mentioned Hansel and Gretel. So there's lots of depictions of these evil witches, and almost everybody's granny or somebody will tell you about the witch who has a wart on her nose and has a familiar. That's right. Ben Crabtree says the wicked witches tend to get a lot more attention than the healing witches. Mm-hmm. That's right, because they're more exciting and scary. But we've also got those witches. Not only were there evil witches who would try to kill people and eat children and things like this. There were also hexing witches who you could go and you could pay them to hex somebody for you.
Which goes to those barn thingies that we talked about. What were those things called?
Barn stars.
Barn stars. I did some research after we did that episode, and I was like,
I did
gotta
too.
figure out what that was. And it turned out that some of them were to push hexes away. And the video I'd seen at the time had like the chart showing what all the little symbols meant. But it looks like a lot of me find today. It looks more for style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was much up towards Pennsylvania and in the northern Appalachian
Like
Mountains.
Germanic.
Yeah, where they were more for warding witches. And as we talked about, we have tales of witches going back a long time in Germany. Hansel and Gretel is a German story, a Bavarian story, if you will, back before the German Empire even existed in ancient Bavaria. But
Even though it's like there's like say like the good ones too. There's a lot of especially like historically medicinal stuff.
right.
And then there's also the misconceptions, your witch hunts and stuff like that. They actually call women that used to, way back in the day, women were the ones that brewed beer, and they wore pointed hats and stuff, so that's where the normal depiction of like what we say is a witch
Okay.
was actually done from like they were making beer.
So that would be more of one of
They were making
your
craft beer.
that would be small batch.
Just small batch. Hipsters with pointy hats.
Well, that would be more of your healing witches, I guess, who were skilled with different herbs and flowers and berries and things that they found in the woods and different ingredients and
doctor.
and probably even things like you would see them with toads and stuff, but they probably knew which toads secreted which chemicals that could be used for different healing effects or poisoning effects if you were so inclined. We also have the witch doctor, who was somebody who was an expert at removing hexes and undoing the witchery of the evil witches and things like this.
And also, I think even in today's culture, in Amish, they use they keep someone in there. I forgot what do they use the Spanish word of bruja? Yeah, I think they call.
I believe
them.
you're right. Yeah, I think I've heard that.
They have like someone in the village that they're like, okay, they do some.
Is it Amish that do that, or is it the Mennonites?
It's Amish, I'm pretty sure.
Is it? I know because the Amish shit like goes like it through this like phases of like there's different sects of them, because I do remember you are right, one of those branches like has all like these
It's kind of like
really big into the thingies, and they have like these weird blankets they'll sleep under at night to keep the hexes off of them with like weird symbols on them, and they take verses out of the Bible very literally, like there's a certain verse that you're supposed to chant over and over again for healing because of this, and there's one to ward off hexes. But I don't remember the exact name. But yeah, keep going. Sorry.
well, that's basically what it was. They had someone, especially as like medicinal, like medicine and stuff like that, that did some of the practices of that, and they just like, yeah, it's like they're like hush hush about that, since they think it's wrong, I guess, but then also they still allow it.
It's almost like Old Testament, because they allowed it in the Old Testament. They would periodically kill them all, but they would allow what would we call soothsayers, sages, fortune tellers, and even who was the one that was trying to kill David? I think it was Saul, where he went to someone. You can find it in the Old Testament where he according, if you believe the Old Testament, then that means if you take the Bible literally. I'm sorry, folks, if you take the Bible literally, that means you believe that you can bring spirits back from the dead, because he wishes to talk to Elijah, I'm pretty sure, and he says, "What the hell you do? You can't be conjuring spirits, you lunatic," essentially. But he essentially says you can't be conjuring spirits, but
King Solomon,
you can do it.
Solomon did it a lot.
If you believe that, you can do it.
Yeah, King Solomon was famous for having the lesser. I mean, they even named the book about summoning after him, the Lesser Goetia, or the Lesser Key of Solomon, and then the Greater Key of Solomon. So, and this was, he was said to have a ring with a hexagram on it, and he would sit in a hexagram shaped area and do these conjurings and speak to these different spirits, and he would draw the symbols for each angel or demon. There were 72 of them that he could summon and use or speak to, and you see depictions like this in a lot of movies. I think one that really does it for me is one of the Hammer films, The Devil Rides Out. with Christopher Lee. It's actually crazy. I was watching that movie the night that Christopher Lee died. I was awake at like 5 a.m. For some reason, I was watching The Devil Rides Out, and like right when it went off, I see that Christopher Lee has died. I thought that was kind of crazy, but it has some good depictions, and they actually summon the devil in that film. But similar to how that's done is how you would summon the lesser demons from the Goetia. Ben, we got another chat from Ben Crabtree here saying, I think the Amish call them Brokerai, not sure about the spelling. That'd be very similar to Bruja, the Spanish version.
Yeah.
So yeah, you might be right about that, Ben. That does sound more German, which would make sense, or Dutch, that we would run into up there.
I know it was a B sound at the beginning of it.
Brucherai, probably maybe would be how you say that. That would be very similar to Brugera, just probably with a little bit of a more of a Germanic.
Here's another one.
We got another chat from Ben. Okay, let's see here.
Probably.
Thank you for commenting, Ben. We appreciate your input. When I was young and first interested in witchcraft, my friend pointed out the Bible verse, "Thou shalt not suffering with."
Shall not suffer a witch.
Which is, thou shalt not suffer.
And they also say that rebellion is a sin of witchcraft, so they get you in a lot of. Bible uses a lot of ways to string you.
Now, my daughter's really into learning about that stuff, and it's very. Some of it's you could say is superstition, and we have a lot of Appalachian superstition as well. I can't say what that says. With HBO Live, I took it as Oh, okay. Thou shalt not suffer witches to live. I took it as a challenge. Yeah, it's okay. So I guess Ben is into the witchery there. That's cool. It's nice to have somebody who knows a little bit about what we're talking about, probably more than we do, tuning in.
Several close friends that are actively practicing in it.
Yeah.
I guess it just depends on what you mean by witchcraft, because the idea of witchcraft is anything. Well, the idea of what the Bible calls witchcraft might not be what people consider witchcraft. A lot of it's pagan rituals.
Well, I think when you look at it too, you have to look at how,
which is only rebellious because it's going against the one God. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, you have that in the Bible, and then you also have the tales of things like Hansel and Gretel and old, evil witches in ancient Bavaria. And out of that, you also had women they were mostly women, but there were men too, who were learning the secrets of the different plants and animal species of their area, and learning to make concoctions to help people out of this. But they did it similarly to the Masons, and they took on apprentices, like maybe one at a time, and they did not let everyone know what the secrets of their craft, for one, to protect their craft, because if everybody knew how to make the stuff, nobody was going to come to you, the old lady who lives out in the woods, to cure their fever. And for two, it was considered sacred, and it was considered something that not everyone was illuminated enough to.
Like the Druid, which falls, like what you said, into the pagan rituals.
But the idea of when you're talking about they respected it, and you're saying that they knew it was wrong, but at the same time, we let this be because on some level we have to acknowledge. There used to be the idea that we understood balance, that even if there was a bad out there, that there was nothing you could do about it. It was going to be there. And there's the idea that we've talked about it before, about the right-hand path and the left-hand path, being the right hand would be more akin to Christianity, of groups all doing something together, whereas the left is smaller numbers practicing sometimes at night, that sort of thing. But a big part of the left-hand path goes back to Solomon. A big part of the lore behind Solomon going down the, I guess, with the pentagram on his ring and summoning the devil and stuff, that would be left-hand path, because the idea of finding God through the dirty shit. Like, if you believe that God is the sky and the rain that brings life, you also have to believe that God is the desert that kills you, and that God is the skull. And that's why, like, the more witchy people get obsessed with the idea of the skull and stuff, because normal people most people are right-hand pathers. They like the idea of life and the beautiful things like flowers and such. But there has to be a sect of people that are interested in the other side, or we lose touch with the reality that we are going to die one day. And once upon a time, our cultures respected that person that was kind of out there enough and brave enough to embrace that sort of thing. That way we can kind of contact it when we need to contact the dirty part of life. But now we're kind of at war with everything. Plus, the left hand has kind of gone mainstream, which kind of sucks a little bit of the soul out of it. So I guess you got to be careful what you really call witchy.
Well, I think when you had these ladies who were doing these, they were learning at let's call it the right hand path of witchery out in the say it's an old hag, if you will, who lives out in the woods, and she.
Well, I guess they get the idea that right hand means good and left hand means bad, and that's not what it means. Like, left hand is more about solitude.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say that. I suppose I mean you're looking at that it more as
power of self sort of thing rather than.
It's the idea of finding God through solitude. Like, if some people find God through 300 people chanting, and they have that euphoric moment where we all realize we're one. And sometimes you do it with, like, Buddha would be a left-hand path. Or Buddha sat underneath the Bodhi tree for however long and punished himself until he realized quite literally, this is stupid, I don't need to be doing this. And he found the middle way. And so that would be the left-hand path of enlightenment. And we're all different, you know? So...
Well, I think when you had these witch women who were out there doing things like brewing beer and doing these things all in secret, they began to get from people who didn't know what they were doing, especially if they were had warts on their nose or became uglier. They probably were associated with witches who were the evil witches, and there's many instances of witches being persecuted. Of course, most famously in the Salem witch trials of the 1600s, you had lots of people murdered. Being accused of being witches, but I think that it's always been, if you look at movies like Monty Python, where they get into the sketch there where she's a witch and how they're gonna see if she floats and all that shit. So I think that's representative of an old custom of looking at a woman who does things with plants in the wood and lives in solitude as a witch and looking at her as nefarious. And even if something like L. Frank Baum's the Wizard of Oz books and the Oz series, he depicts these different kinds of witches. There's the solitary witch who is just kind of selfish and out for her own good. There's the evil, wicked witch. There's the good witch.
That line always cracked me up when I was a kid on the Wizard of Oz, because she contradicts herself off of that. She goes, "Are you a good witch or a bad witch?" She says, "I'm not a witch at all." And then she later explains that only bad witches are ugly.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Dancing on Dorothy.
Yeah. I read, man, they have, L. Frank Baum actually wrote, I think, 18 different Oz books, and it's kind of crazy. He doesn't really get mentioned a lot as somebody who was a predictor of the future, but he predicted things in some of his later books. When you get into the later books where Ozma is the series, first of all, Ozma is a girl who has been transformed into a boy. So that's pretty timely now. When she realizes her true self, she transforms back into a girl. But he also mentions in there he has the last of these books were written in the late 19 teens, and he has hovercraft in there. He has cell phones. He has closed circuit television. And garage door openers, laser weapons that he refers to all back then. So he's pretty far ahead of his time. And they were even in the book it was said they were people thought that they were magic, but they were actually technological devices. And so he recognized a lot of the things that were coming as far as what technology would be available in the future, or at least imagined it.
Have you seen Return to Oz?
Return to Oz is no, I've not seen it. No.
It's almost like I just found somebody who had never tried a drug before and they're about to. You need to find, there's a movie, it's called Return to Oz.
Okay.
It has the girl that was in The Craft, and she also played Bobby Boucher's girlfriend.
Okay.
You know what I'm
I know
saying?
what you're talking about.
It's her as a little girl, she plays Dorothy, and it takes place relatively soon after she gets back, and it's a book too.
Okay.
And it's pretty true to the book. Anybody who's not seen that, swear to God, you gotta go watch it.
I've not seen it.
And it's not happy like the other one. Like it's much darker.
The rest of the stories are very.
She comes back to Oz and everybody's been turned to stone, and this thing called the Mountain King's taken over.
Yeah.
See if you get on the thing right now and just go Return to Oz and pull up Wheelers. That's what.
Yeah,
That's what.
dude, that's in the book.
Dude, the movie starts out with them about to give Dorothy electroshock treatment because they think she's schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Which we've been talking about.
Yeah, the Wheelers. They actually depict the Wheelers, those men who are like wheels. No, I have.
Really good for the good. It's really good for the air. They make up with claymation and stuff. They've got.
I've read the book. But
TikTok, the little wind-up soldier.
yeah, I remember very distinctly. You know, when she runs into these guys in the book, they're pretty crazy, and this looks like exactly what they were.
That's
What they were talking about.
I'm saying, like, I
That's
guess
not from the movie, though, is it?
no, the movie itself, like, I guess when you just contrast it to the first one, is why I love it so much, because it's, to a kid, this would be terrifying back in the 80s anyway, I guess.
Here's a Wheeler from Return to Oz.
Wouldn't be terrifying to these modern kids and
Yeah.
getting on the internet at like 4 years old and seeing smut porn and stuff, but this was scary to an 80s kid. This thing's rolling at her, laughing like a maniac, and then
Yeah.
it flies out into the sand and turns to sand because Oz is now evil.
Yeah, that was a pretty good book. I'm surprised that they actually made a movie of it.
Return to Oz, yeah.
I'll have to check that out. I had no idea.
I'm trying to think if it's got who else has got in it. It's got a queen that she encounters at one point who changes her head whenever she gets bored.
Mm-hmm.
But
That's in the book too.
but she's pretty much a slave to the head, so she puts them in the wrong hand. She
Yeah.
becomes a murderer.
Dude, that's in the book too. Wow.
She just gets a hinkling to put this one, and she's like, "Ah, time to cut Dorothy's face off." You know?
I can't believe they put it that, because usually when you see a movie made into, or a
Which
book made into a movie,
popular because it was.
yeah, they
Like I
don't.
said, it wasn't Wizard of Oz-ish. It was pretty dark.
Return to Oz, a Stone Cold Trips has been.
It
Yeah,
is.
you're right about that.
I
The
can
book
hear
is
it,
anyway. I'm gonna have to watch that movie. I had no idea there was a
We need
movie.
to watch it. Get it together and watch. I'll watch it together. That'd be a good.
That would
one.
be cool. All right.
I've not actually. I don't believe I ever
It's like a
have.
Mandela thing. Did I come in from a different?
No, man, that's crazy. I really had no idea.
That's the cover. This thing right here.
I shared a couple of articles in the description about the Appalachian folk magic and granny witchcraft, and it's kind of just getting into more detail about some of the things we were talking about. Granny magic is known, it's kind of it's a relatively new term, but it's
Is it more like herbs? Are we going?
yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, dowsing is part of it. Yeah, water witches. Yeah, kind of all the stuff that you go to for Granny, like. Granny had, like you step on a nail, Granny'd have some herbs and some bacon grease or something that she'd...
Cigarette.
Yeah, well, cigarettes for bee
bee
stings, and there was like, my granny would put, knocked in the head, she'd stick butter on the head and do something with some other stuff, but there was, there was lots of different versions of this, but all of it could be considered granny witchery because you're using the natural properties of foods or herbs or whatever ingredients you can find in the wild to have a medicinal purpose. But anyway, these a lot of times the ladies knew how to do this lived out in a shack in the woods, and people would call them a witch, whether they were a witch or not.
That's I think would be a good thing to try to keep in mind while we keep talking about
guess
this. Is you don't really get to decide if they call you a witch or not.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure a lot of people would call me a witch, and I'm not. I just spend a whole lot of time by myself. I mess with plants a whole lot. And I like weird books. I listen to weird music. So, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, you could be a witch.
you could be considered that real quick. Golf, you
Yeah.
dress black all the time. You listen to music. I mean, like, you don't get to decide if people call you a witch or go to Salem witch trials. Mm-hmm. What is this right here?
Oh, it's just some witchy ingredients.
What is it? It's a spaghetti
Looks like white
strawberry.
oleander or something. What is that?
Not sure.
Oh, elderflowers.
Elderflower. I've not messed
Yeah.
with that.
So from elderberries. So yeah, it's a couple of the articles that I shared in the
Put it
description
in some booze.
about some. Yeah, that's what they do with a lot
Mix it
of.
with alcohol.
Yeah, a lot of these things they give you hot toddies. The Appalachian sickness cure. They put you some whiskey and lemon and
okay.
what all they put in it? Whiskey, lemon, honey. That was.
There's one. It's like you use apple cider vinegar,
It's not a vinegar for a little bit.
honey, butter, and pepper. And there's lemon in it, or lemon or lime in it
Yeah.
too. And it's actually supposed to be good for throat and stuff. You have a
Like a coconut
sort
or
of
something.
And that's good old Appalachian witchery right there. I mean, it's.
I didn't think that would work, and then someone told me, I was like, you just heat it up, and it's pretty gross all mixed together. But you just do it in a shot glass, and it works pretty well.
we see depictions of things like that in like the Beverly Hillbillies with Granny, making up her what she call them, her salves and her tinctures and
Weather
stuff that
beetle.
she makes out of moon. She makes her own moonshine, and that was another tradition of some of the granny witches, is that they would distill themselves. And we also see depictions of that in shows like Andy Griffith, where we saw the flower shop ladies.
Florists,
yeah. They're growing
Only for special occasions.
Yeah, that's right. And they were actually narking on the other people who had moonshine stills to get them put out of business. So
That would be bad witching.
yeah, so
right?
well, I don't know. They didn't feel like that people should be using the moonshine the way that the other guys in the town were using it, so that Otis could get drunk. I guess he's the only guy you ever saw drunk in Mayberry, so I guess all the four
Looking
guys,
out for Otis.
yeah, all the four guys who had stills in Mayberry were just supplying Otis, and he looked like he could probably drink quite a few before he went under the table or in the jail, as it were, on the cot. But anyway, I shared a couple of those things in the description there, so if you want to check those out, they're in there. Before we get too late, let's get into, we talked about the Illuminati and the Bavarian Illuminati, and I thought it was pretty interesting that while we were discussing butterflies and monarchs, and that's kind of a symbol that's more associated with the lighter things, or maybe even a good witch. And what if rather than being an Illuminati prop or an Illuminati plant, as it were, what if Dolly Parton is a good witch?
I'm not sure judge her on that or not.
I'm not either, but what if she was? Because one of the things that witches and sorceresses do, or sorceresses, I guess, are a kind of witch.
Sorcery implies that you're casting spells. Witch just implies that you're doing pagan-y stuff off by yourself.
Okay.
Like, you're not actually a sorcerer unless you're,
Okay, well, you
whether
could
it's
call it
good or bad. Unless you're directing your energy towards other people. You're not.
a sorcerer could also be a mesmer, as it were, or
Yeah.
so with the techniques of Charles Mesmer, I think it was, is he's the one who cataloged them and put them together in a way to create a school of hypnosis. But those tricks, including like neuro-linguistic programming, had been used for a long time by people who would be called sorceresses. And as we talked about a little bit when we talked about briefly 1984, even somebody like O'Brien, who was Winston's captor, and that could be considered a sorceress, because when he tortures Winston, he causes Winston to be able to see things that aren't there. He changes himself into a bubble and floats and warps his mind, and that would be what a sorceress would do. Would be somebody who is
Hollywood.
yeah,
You know, so
and that's where I'm getting at with it.
The magic wand was supposed to be made out of a holly tree, and that's kind of the idea of, oh God, we're about to get into end time stuff all of a sudden.
That's all right. Take it where it
it's
goes.
the idea that magic is real, but you just don't understand what it is. Like, it's the idea that you can go to Hollywood and a bunch of people can make a film, which is just a series of clips and music, and they've tuned it, they fine-tuned it so much that it emotionally makes it can make people do things.
You will make decisions based on
Yes.
things that you see in the
And
film.
that's quite literally a spell. It's like a very well-written book that makes people become a better person. You know what I'm saying? That's a spell.
And I think that way we can look at Dolly with her music and her empire that she's built from, for all the way up to Dollywood with, look at the amount of influence she has on the culture. She, as we talked about, she gives out free books to every kid under 5. So some of the first things that kids in Tennessee learn to read are a lot of things that they get from Dolly. So she's definitely having influence. And you look at these pictures, and I think it's a good influence. Overall, my kids got the Dolly Parton books, and they were all good stuff. They learned, helped learn my kids to read. Help learn them.
Learn them good. Tell that Dolly.
Help my kids
Dolly
learn.
Parton's. That's what it said.
That's how you
Dolly
talk.
learns you the alphabet.
That's how you talk when you learn to read from Dolly Parton, folks. But Dolly, though,
Well, it could represent if what you're saying is true, and if Dolly really is into mountain witchery.
well, I don't know if she is or not. I'm just saying.
It's a theory.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If she is, the butterfly would represent transcendence, which is
Changing.
the idea of as above, so below, that this is not the end, that you keep going and you keep descending or whatever. The metamorphosis But then if you take it into the Illuminati thing, it's the idea of transhumanism, that we are just the caterpillar and that we're shooting for the butterfly.
We as humans are caterpillars. That's right. And
which is the idea that we will chew up as many caterpillars as we need as long as we make that butterfly. So.
Well, and I think that's a good time to transition a little bit over to the Bavarian Illuminati and what that actually was.
That was kind of their goal, wasn't it?
Yeah, well,
it was to make a better breakaway group of people.
Well, the Illuminati, when they started in 1776, May 1st, actually, 1776, they were started by Adam Weishaupt. He was a Catholic kid who was German, and he grew up in the Jesuit schools, right? And he was exposed to a lot of the ideas from the Enlightenment, including some Kabbalistic teachings and other things that he wanted to see spread out. He thought that he felt like the governments of the time, and I think he was perfectly justified in feeling this way, were overly oppressive. They had done things like, murdering Knights Templars, murdering witches, murdering peasants.
Church too.
Yeah, he was. Well, a lot of the church was intertwined with the government. Yeah. So he was more of an anarchist of his day. A lot of times he gets associated with the Jacobins in France, but I think he was a little pre-Jacobin. Well, I mean, he was literally pre-Jacobin because he was around before they started. Ben Crabtree says, most people I know think Dolly is a folk saint, but I'm leaning towards enchantress. Yeah, I think so. That's a possibility. A siren of sorts, if you will. Some of her songs are so known culturally that they could be almost like those movies, Disney movies that we talked about in the last episode, where they could be triggers for people. They're that well known. Something like Jolene, especially, or I Will Always Love You. Those are really well known, really enchanting songs.
And somehow you seem to know all the words, even if you've not really heard the song before. It's like it's.
Well, back to get back onto the early Illuminati, we were. I mean, the name goes back earlier than this, but the actual Bavarian Illuminati Society was 1776 by Adam Weishaupt, and his idea was basically to spread the ideas of the Enlightenment and that we don't need governments to control us as people or churches to control us as people.
Wasn't that the opposite of the common thought of the Illuminati, isn't it?
Well, I think his idea, if you think about it, if you think about it though, the Illuminati.
This version of it.
This version, the modern Illuminati, is supposed to be the banking families, right? So back then.
But aren't they supposed to be? Is it common in conspiracy circles that you're familiar with? Are they supposed to be ascended from this? Because I remember we started before you got here was talking about how the word Illuminati is sort of a blanket term for those in control, and that there really a lot of people don't know there really was a group called the Illuminati. That's where we get that word from, which is what Cliff's talking about right now. Do you think they're connected? That would be the short of it.
Well, it's going to take me a little while to get around to that, so I hope you'll bear with me.
I will.
As I go through this little bit here with Weishaupt and the Illuminati of the day. His idea was originally that these ideas of the Enlightenment are too advanced for older people, basically. And so he tried to recruit a group of high society, well-connected young people. He didn't want anybody over 30 years old in the group because he felt they would be too unreceptive to these new ideas. And his plan in creating the Illuminati, he joined the Freemasons because he liked some of those things that they were doing as far as spreading enlightenment and brotherhood, but they were kind of in his opinion, they were not revolutionary enough, I guess. So his idea was
too much of a social club.
Yeah, I don't know if that was it, maybe, but they were maybe too connected to the old order. I think maybe was his feeling.
Was it his connection to religion, wasn't it?
That too, yeah, that was,
would allow church members in, and he was real sketchy about people who were super connected with the church,
right,
because he thought they wouldn't be receptive to the idea of non-biblical and church studies. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
That's correct.
Because if I'm not mistaken, later on down the road, he partners up with that, was that guy, Kaniga? Is that how you say this guy's name?
Baron Adolf Kaniga.
He has to go and convince him. He's like, look, you got to start letting some people in who like the Jesus, so you're never going to have any members.
Well, that's actually how he really grew, because the Bavarian Illuminati had been around for a few years, and they hadn't really. I think they in 4 years they had gained up to about 60 members, and they, like I said, they would only have younger people who they felt would be able to push these ideas into mainstream society. And I think this is very similar to something like what we have today with the World Economic Forum. We've talked about them a lot over these episodes, but I think the connection will be clear after I explain this a little bit further. But we go to Weishaupt, and he meets Kniga, who is basically he's somebody who gives some legitimacy to the Bavarian Illuminati, and their membership roles really start to expand, and until there's basically
Kniga was a Mason also.
Yeah, he was there, and then like Kniga was so good at like they had very similar rituals or I guess ceremonies to the Masons, and a lot of the symbology was the same too, because Weishaupt was interested in that stuff. And he was also
knowledge.
Yeah, and he was also
way to get it out.
He was also a Jesuit, which shares a lot of the similarities in that they probably held a lot of this occult knowledge that the Masons held too. The building obviously was a metaphor by this time. It originally probably did start out as the Secrets of Temple building, but as they discovered a lot of this old knowledge from geometry to philosophy and sciences, they begin to protect this too and refer to it as the work, or their building, and talk about it in those regards. Well, Kniga was a part of this, and he found this particularly appealing, and Weishaupt had a plan for people to advance through up to be at a higher level of Illuminus, right? And Kniga went through this so fast that he basically figured out Weishaupt didn't have enough for him to do yet. So he says, hey, we got to get together and actually, make this thing where we can bring people in and that we can have some hierarchy to go through, and we can
it was like
spread it out.
3, and then he was like, no, you need 13.
Yeah.
Well, just what kind of person, and I guess this before you continue, what kind of person says, I need to make a secret society because, I mean, like, do you think he really intended to, I mean, like, that fascinates me at the idea who's somebody that wants to create that kind of a club.
Well, I think he may have had some level of success.
I think he had a little bit different motivations, though.
Well,
Growing up, it only required you to be young and beautiful and gullible.
Isn't that a lot of religious stuff though?
yeah, that's true. But
Come on, you weary and hot.
well, the Bavarian Illuminati, though, they were, Adam Weishaupt, he was a professor, he was a law professor, and he also made this, he had a teaching gig, and eventually the story is that him and Kniga had a falling out, and basically the group kind of fell apart, and then the different governments actually banned the Illuminati by name. Well, first they banned secret societies, and then later they banned the Illuminati by name. And my thinking on that is, and that's the official story, right? My thinking is that they faked this whole thing. They faked that they broke up and didn't do anything because they were being well known. They were starting to be recognized.
They changed the name.
I think they went into the Freemasons Lodge and spread it over to the New World. And I don't think it's a coincidence that that we had the American Revolution in 1776, and then we also had, by the time the Constitution came around, it was almost, really, when you consider the Articles of Confederation and Constitution were as closest thing to an anarchist's government that we had at the time, because they actually they listed the powers that the government has, and they said everything else is in the hands of the people. So this was right along with the ideals of Adam Weishaupt and the Bavarian Illuminati, and we see some of this come up. If we look at the Library of Congress now here, from George Washington's letters, this is to the Reverend G.W. Snyder in 1798, and he says to him, I have heard much of the nefarious and dangerous plan and doctrines of the Illuminati, but never saw the book until you were pleased to send it to me. The same causes which has prevented my acknowledging the receipt of my letter have prevented me from reading the book hitherto, namely the multiplicity of matters which pressed upon me before, the debilitated state I was left in, and after a severe fever had been removed, which is actually what killed George Washington. He was bled to death by his doctor when he had the flu. They thought they could drain his blood and cure him, and they killed him.
Imagine having the flu. Like, imagine the worst case of flu you had, and all of a sudden somebody's like, time to drain your blood. How awful you would
Take you in the barber chair and fucking drain your blood. Yeah, that's going to make you feel way better. But he says...
I'd rather go with the witch lady in the woods and just get
no doubt.
medicine.
No doubt. George Washington, now he's referring to the Masons lodges, and he says he wants to correct you on an error you have run into of my presiding over the English lodges in the country. The fact is I preside over none, nor have I been in more than one or twice. Been in one more than once or twice within the last 30 years. I believe, notwithstanding, that none of the lodges in this country are contaminated with the principles of the society, or ascribed to the society of the Illuminati. With respect, I am. Anyway, there's that too.
He's saying that George Washington.
George Washington saying he doesn't think the Freemasons are or that the Illuminati are in the Masons lodges. But then we also have another letter. This is from the Library of Congress also. This is in response to that letter, in response to a response to that letter. And he says, it was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and principles of Jacobism, and he talks about Jacobism, so this is 1798, this is after the French Revolution has started, and they've been cutting off people's heads and basically violently
chop wait, hashtag.
Well, that's you had...
That was a sentence.
I mean, you had the violent overthrow of the government there in France. I mean, we did have it in England or in America too, but it was basically it was a little bit different there because they tried to do everything legally, and then when they were attacked, they responded in force and declared war and declared independence. And whereas in France, it was just like, you know, the Americans can do it, we can do it too. Revolt, take their fucking heads, you know. And they follow the principles of Jacobism, or Jacobism, or however you want to say it.
I like Jacob. It sounds.
That's how the French say it. But the
So if you ever just get real mad and feel like chopping a head off, can you say, I feel that French coming up in me?
Feel a little Robespierre bubbling
I
up
always
in
thought
me.
it was that red in my beard, that little bit of Irish and Scottish I've got in me that made me so angry. Nope, it's
That's
that
a
big chunk of
Robespierre.
French.
Jacobin, Robespierre, Jacobin. But he says, Washington says, it was not my intention to doubt that the doctrines of the Illuminati and principles of Jacobism had not spread in the United States. On the contrary, no one is more truly satisfied of this fact than I am. And what he means by that is not that he's glad that they're here, but that he is convinced, he's satisfied that is what's happening. The idea I meant to convey was, he goes on, that I did not believe the lodges of Freemasons in this country had, as societies, endeavored to propagate the diabolical tenets of the first or the pernicious principles of the latter, if they are susceptible of separation. The individuals of them may have done it, or that founder or the instrument employed to found the democratic societies in the United States may have had these objects and actually had a separation of the people from their government in view is too evident to question. So he's saying there, it sounds like he's kind of double talking them a little bit there, saying, well, no, I didn't really mean to say that the Freemasons were, that there wasn't any Jacobins or any Illuminati in the United States. I just meant to say that they weren't in the Freemasons Lodge. Well, actually, I didn't mean to say that they weren't in the Freemasons Lodge, but that the people in the Freemasons Lodge were acting as Freemasons when they were spreading these doctrines. So
There is no Antifa.
he sounds a little wishy-washy on it. Yeah, that's very similar to that. Yeah, it sounds
When
very
you
similar
say
to that.
the Freemasons, because essentially what happened was the Bavarian Illuminati got outlawed. Mm-hmm. Those people didn't go in. It's not like they all went to prison.
No.
You know, they all just went back into the Freemasons in their society, essentially carrying on their great work from there.
Weishaupt lost his job, but his work lived on. The ideas of of less government and less church interference were really born in the United States. I mean, if you think about it, all the things that he advocated were a step closer due to the formation of the United States. So you have to wonder if there wasn't something in that. And then there is, I mean, it's a fact that many of the founding fathers were Masons. I forget how many of them. It's not all of them like a lot of people say it was. I think there were 33 people who signed the Declaration of Independence, though, weren't there? But I don't believe all of them were Masons. But it did. They did have a lot of Masons in, and if you look at the Capitol, of course, there's Masonic influence there. And the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, was the original capital.
Philadelphia's crazy.
A lot of Masonic influence there.
It was like that's the most Gotham-y city.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tim Burton Gotham-y. If the buildings were a little bit bigger, it'd be more Gotham-y. But
well, I think when we look at the Bavarian Illuminati, and I think we also look at the Bohemian Grove.
Is that where we're going next?
That's where we're going, because I think that gives us a little evidence that maybe that Bavarian society is still alive. That's because that's basically what the Bohemian Club is the continuation.
Some people have speculated that now they've stretched out, and that Burning Man is a part of that.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Well, I mean, it's very similar. You do have the Burning Man ritual. It's very similar to the cremation of care. Which, if you've seen Alex Jones's film Dark Secrets, where he sneaks into the Bohemian Grove and watches the ceremony, you can see what they actually do. Here's a...
Whoa, Death!
Yeah.
That's what they need to do. That, like, take that owl and put the Whoa, Death dude from Oh Brother Where Art
Dr. Ralph Stanley, man, what a song that is. Oh, man. Like, so it's just the old man singing a cappella, and
but
so awesome.
They got that big owl and all those naked people and stuff, and he's just out there going, like the most unpoetic gobbledygook. You got all those rich people there, and you couldn't afford a good singer.
There's one, man. If you saw that, you can tell. Like it's generally people think of Republicans because that's who has been typically found there. I mean, they knew the Bushes went there, and Henry Kissinger was famously photographed there wearing like a coconut bra. I don't think Bill Clinton was ever photographed there, but there's Democrats and Republicans, but I think it's mostly Republicans who are prominently known.
Like oil and stuff like that.
It is, and it's like the boys' club, and supposedly, a lot of Republicans in the past were closet homosexuals. That was actually how that they were blackmailed when it was less acceptable to be homosexual.
Kind of like how all the top Democrats are secretly racist.
Mm-hmm. Exactly the
It's
thing.
always the reverse. That's the witchcraft that they have.
And that's how they control them, because if everybody finds out that they were homosexual, they've created this. It's almost like they even created the homophobia that was in a lot of Republicans in order to have the reason to be able to kick somebody out. It's like,
you think I got honeypot them like a gay Epstein style?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think maybe they did. Yeah,
existed,
Yeah.
Otherwise, you kept catching these like pastors getting caught snorting meth off of gay prostitutes' butt cracks and stuff. It's like they're all doing it, and they're also all the ones railing against homosexuality. I'm starting to see a trend.
Yep.
Are all the people screaming about the gays secretly closeted?
Yep.
And making too much money to come out.
Well, you think of guys like Lindsey Graham. He was always, they always said he was gay, and he's the South Carolina senator from South Carolina. He was always buddies with John McCain, and it was always rumored that he was gay and that he was a Republican, and that was why he was so easily controlled and why he did the country so badly and was a big war hawk and everything. Is because he was being blackmailed. I don't know if that's true or not, but it was that true that there were a lot of Republicans. It could be.
Have been a gay.
Well, yeah, he's friends with John McCain's number one right hand man. So,
well, they do a lot of like, since we're talking about Republicans being closeted in a very like nefarious way. Because it's like I really do. It's like it really is like with the 80s era petrol people, those Republicans. They had like all those weird like skull and bones, like kind of blatantly homosexual rituals where it was like
Well, they were
To get in the club, you
beat
gotta
off in
lay.
a coffin or something.
Yeah, you gotta like lay naked in the glass coffin while 30 of your best buds jerk off on you.
Yeah.
Like, and now we're all gonna go vote to keep gay people.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and then like you had Bush and Kerry that were both involved in that Skull and Bones, and there's a lot of connections between that. A lot of people tie that to the rituals from the Bavarian Illuminati and the Freemasons of the time, and then you have the cremation of care ritual, which I'm trying to show people this. Yes. But it's not working. But if you watch that video, Dark Secrets, you can see. And what I was going to mention is one of those voices is definitely Al Gore. He says, "Be gone, dull care," and it sounds. I was like, "That's fucking Al Gore, man."
Well, they're a Democrat.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Energy. He's just in green energy.
Yep.
It's still energy.
The man bear pig.
Big old man, bear pig.
And just like we're talking about how the Republicans keep getting caught doing gay stuff, why do we keep finding these pillars of racial equality? We keep finding pictures of them in blackface and stuff.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? It's like the world's always upside down. The people who are hurting the gay people with laws are actually closeted, mean gay people. And all the people who claim to be helping black people actually hate them because they keep getting caught doing bigoted stuff. Mm-hmm. Which goes back to your point. Maybe that's how they control them.
Well, these guys came over from Bavaria. You got the Bohemian Club doing Bavarian stuff. You got the Granny Witches, and they are actually in this article that I shared about. I think it's in the description about Bavarian root doctors and herbal lore. I think this may be some of the origins of some of the Granny Witches because a lot of them came through. You know, we had a lot of Scott and Ulster Scot. Irish, English people in this area, and up north they had more Dutch and German, even though we did have some Dutch and German here, but they all shared similar tricks as far as the witch ladies for herbs and things like this. So I think a lot of this witchery was also passed down in other groups too, and maybe the symbology and maybe even this used as ritual more than practical. To symbolize certain things and handing down to this enlightenment, and maybe the connection to some of these groups who were from Germany, just the same. You had your witches, and then you also had your secret societies, and I think they kind of were parallel to one another. Not that they were connected, but while you had the lower, your agrarian people, your poor people coming over from Germany, and they were spreading this occult knowledge of, and by occult I mean hidden, esoteric knowledge. More would probably be a better term to use.
Main people just don't know.
Yeah.
They don't even, I think the best way I heard it was put was, it's knowledge that you don't know because you don't even know it exists.
Yeah, you don't know that you
don't even know to look for it.
Right. So I'd say you have the two different kinds of esoteric knowledge. One coming over, I mean, many different ones, but one in particular being the Granny Witches and their esoteric knowledge, whether that be, healing or finding water or hexing or removing hexes or eating children or whatever. It's esoteric knowledge that comes over from old Bavaria, the old Celtic cultures, the Druids, and even all the way back into ancient Greece and Rome. We see kind of these bits of knowledge being passed down through ritual and through having membership in a group where you attain and you have apprenticeship to learn these things. And we see very similar things coming from the political and educational side with the Bavarian Illuminati, and we see that those ideals blossomed in America, and potentially I think that they did come through in the Freemasons lodges. I think that's how a lot of them went over here. I think that the breaking up of the Bavarian Illuminati was all just a show, because they were getting on everyone's radar. Their whole idea was, let's bust apart the governments and the churches of Europe. And the governments and churches of Europe, I mean, in order to do that, they had to integrate themselves into the societies there. And the churches and governments of Europe were not going to allow that. So they had to have a public falling apart once they were on the radar, and then in order to recruit people, they had to get on the radar. Mm-hmm. So I think it only makes sense that you would have something happen like your most famous member and your founder, Baron Adolf Carnegie and Adam Weishaupt have a falling out. He's bust the society up. Adam Weishaupt has to leave. Next thing you know, all their dreams are culminated across the ocean in the new Atlantis, founded by Freemasons. I just think it makes a lot of sense, and that's my interpretation of theories and facts that I've come across in it.
Could be like a Marx effect too, or like just because he wasn't just because those two guys weren't directly in control of the wave that came after the Illuminati. It's kind of like Karl Marx, and those guys never really saw any of the glory of any sort of communist empire. But that book that they put out has
Das Kapital.
I mean, that's caused many regimes to pop up that they know that was going to happen. I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe that could be controlled opposition.
I mean, they probably wanted it to, but I don't know that they knew it would. And they were funded by. I don't know that they were. I mean, they were funded by the old money of the day. The Marx and Engels were funded by the
I guess I'm
bankers.
just making the comparison to, like, I guess the wave of just because somebody is not directly leading the charge, that they can be dead and their influence can still keep going.
Absolutely.
You know? So the Illuminati mindset could have just taken over the Freemasonry just through by proxy.
Yeah.
You know, like an idea is like a virus, to quote the Matrix.
Well, I mean, and one of the big things of the Mason lodges back then was yes, they were religious, but they also understood that science was important, and they understood that not everybody was ready for that knowledge, and and that it also was dangerous to them to possess this knowledge, because it was the knowledge that could overthrow kings. It was the knowledge that could overthrow empires. So they had to be careful about how they spread this stuff around, even if they did not intend to use this knowledge in such a manner. If they, like, for instance, found evidence that the Earth goes around the sun rather than the sun going around the Earth, that could overturn the whole of the world. And it did eventually. But so there was a reason why the kings and the empires of old and the churches would not want that knowledge to be had, even if they weren't planning on turning the world upside down with it. Just the potential that it could, the power structures of old could not allow it to exist.
What's their common knowledge, you think? Like, back then they wanted to make everybody think the Earth was shaped a different way, and, you know, they'd hide big things from people because they didn't know any better. Like, what do you think they're hiding now? I mean, I guess that's a giant question, but what would be the one, you know, like, what could they hide in this day and age other than the fact that governments have to bang children from time to time? I don't know, like, that's a weird one.
Bigfoot.
You think Bigfoot's the big one? Okay, well, we can go with that. Why though?
I don't really think Bigfoot.
Bigfoot's like
Bigfoot is our supreme ruler.
That's maybe it.
we're just not allowed to believe. That's what they're putting up a lore about it. If we put statues everywhere,
Maybe it's actually the wood
we know we're
booger.
worshiping it, but we can't let God know that these people know that he exists at the same time.
It's a wood booger.
The wood booger, yes.
There was a word that I saw when we were talking about the Bell Witch earlier. It was a belly snicker or something like
The
that.
belly snicker?
Is that right?
I don't remember that one.
It came from the Germanic side, and it was similar to the Krampus.
Oh, I don't remember it.
Belly snackler or something like that. It was a dude with vines all over his head and crazy stuff. But they think that was a part of the relation to the Bell Witch, was when the Germanic people that had those sorts of black forest, I guess, sorts of stories, when they came over here, they started relating them, you know, to our woods. And the woods of Pennsylvania, it's very thick, just like ours.
I have to imagine, Ben, that you're the Ben that reached out to me via email. So I want to thank you for doing that. And thank you for participating in the show with us tonight. All your comments and chats are appreciated. If there's anybody else out there, feel free to shoot us an email at the ironmountainhour@gmail.com. That's how Ben reached out to us. I reckon he come across us in episode 3, which that video has just blown up over the last couple of weeks. We got like 10,000 views on it in like a week or something. So that we probably get a lot of people coming over from that video. If you've made it this far, appreciate you watching that, and appreciate you joining us on this one. The show has changed a little bit since we did that, because we didn't have the ability to live stream. We had to have 50 viewers before YouTube would even let us live stream. But the video, or the thank you, Ben. Ben says, my pleasure. The format was always intended to be a live talk show with audience participation. We just had to build an audience enough to where we could actually let YouTube have a stream. And so we have that now, and we do want to spread over to different platform. I guess we ought to start doing that now before we get banned from YouTube. Or start getting fact checked too much, because we could potentially get strikes on our channel.
Fact checking, that's like they fact check Eddie Bravo.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like we pose any threat to him, but you just never know, because it's a Google-owned platform, and you just never know. When I watch a lot of streamers who are overall, pretty harmless, but they'll still get strikes on their channel for stuff. And, a lot of them get to the point where they bring all their audience to YouTube, and they've monetized their YouTube, and they're getting advertisement, they're getting super chats, and YouTube can really fuck their world up by cutting them off from that, because a lot of
I think
people...
it's a lesson that people need to learn, is you don't need to be completely dependent on one platform.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea.
Yeah, and that's where we are right now, is we are dependent
all
on...
your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, and we don't want to do that, but I do want to get enough of a following here to where we can get some people to come to us to another
Because this is
platform.
still like the largest, most easily obtainable platform.
Well, you can,
It's where people are, yeah. It's where people are, and it's the highest quality. It's the most user friendly.
There's a lot of people over on Twitch and stuff like that. I do think there's room to reach out. It's just right now where everything we're doing is very local, or actually, I'll be honest with you, I've not been on Twitch a lot, but people keep telling me I should be on there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a video game streaming thing, so I don't know how my music would plug into it. And that same thing, like we do odd conversation. I don't know. Are they listening to nonsensical conversation like ours?
I know there's people
Twitch
like us on
thoughts,
Twitch.
so, I mean,
How's that work?
just girls that do.
Oh, I thought you meant
thoughts.
I thought O-U-G-H-T.
I did too.
Oh, with an educational side. I was like,
Like,
oh.
if that's got a market,
You mean simping, okay.
This is Twitch Thoughts with Dustin Goff.
okay, no, that's how we take over Twitch. We make this, and people are like, okay, well, let's go look for this, and then they find us.
Deep Thoughts with Goff Handy.
You know where I'm going with that. Deep thoughts.
Yep.
T-H-O-D.
Deep Thoughts. Oh, man.
Winky.
Yep.
Oh.
But yeah, we would thank you for joining us on this tonight, and Ben, again, appreciate you
Does anybody blame him? I'm sorry.
for thoughting it up. No, I mean,
Anybody blame him?
I can't say. I mean,
Strip clubs have been around since the days of old, and we're surprised that girls that look at themselves in the mirror go one day and go, I bet a guy would throw me a digital dollar if I showed him these. I don't blame him. I don't
shit. I mean,
like
it's
the
kinda like-
concept of simping. These guys that are like giving it away like they're playing the lottery or something
Well,
like that.
I
But
mean,
I don't blame the girls.
you use what you got, just like you're a talented musician, so you go out and you play music
well, there's
and
no
earn a
stigma
living.
attached to that.
Oh, I don't know,
For
but I'm
some
just
people
saying
it
it's
is, but
it's
not on
like
that level. It's because it's not
No
really.
one's gonna throw me a $900 tip.
it just happens to be that your God-given, talent, your God-given, or your natural talent, God-given talent that you have developed into a skill.
I would have to change it a little bit though, because I had to. You're
hone it, yeah.
You got to hone. You got to
Yeah,
hone your craft
absolutely,
versus
but
shaking what God gave.
Well,
you.
an e-thought doesn't just get money for being hot. There's hot ass girls out there everywhere, but you gotta know how to.
Yeah, but
you
not
gotta
every-
hone that craft to be able to pull in
Yeah, but not
lots of
every
money.
girl knows or is willing to dress up like an anime chick and
I know.
do whatever they do.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, you can't blame them anymore. I mean, it's
Do you think all the green hair came from Bulma? Like, do you
all the
think,
green hair from Bulma.
like almost every girl I see out there nowadays, from like
Do they have
30
like the bob like her, or I don't know?
a lot, but Bulma didn't always have the bob. She had like the long and some of the
That's
diseases
true,
too.
yeah.
I'm just saying, there's a lot of green hair out there, and the only thing I can put behind it is maybe there's a lot of Bulma people out there. I'm seeing an awful lot of those like
Anime got really big, like
Naruto headbands and stuff on the guys, and green hair on girls is a little less. I don't know. A green hair on a girl can make her more attractive versus a headband on a dude. You better. Be
I always thought Bulma was hot when I was a kid.
Say what?
I said I always thought Bulma was hot when I was a kid for a,
Isn't that weird?
for a cartoon
So what does that
character.
make
Anyway,
you then? Because if you just admit that you're sexually attracted to a cartoon character, what is the word for that?
a cartoonophile? I don't know.
Is that what it is?
I don't know. I don't know.
Tunophile. You're a fish. I'm out fishing for ladies.
You can't tell me you didn't think Bulma was hot. And what's her name? She-Ra.
She-Ra.
Yeah, you remember She-Ra?
No, the animation was terrible.
Oh yeah, it was. It was very choppy, but I always thought she was hot.
No, She-Ra looked way too not feminine. Like, she was very built. She looked like she could kill
Oh,
me.
yeah, well.
If we're gonna go with classic bad animation that we got to force ourselves to be attracted to, you got to go Daphne.
Well, that was actually where my mind went next. And then,
It's like, come on, give Velma credit.
yeah.
Actually, Velma in the Scooby-Doo movie with
Yeah.
Matthew Lillard as the
Shaggy.
there was a scene. Hear me out, folks. There's a scene that they cut from the movie, which we'll later discuss, that reveals Velma in a bathing suit doing like a 50s party sort of shindig, and then they cut it out of the movie because when Daphne goes in to find her, she's in there dancing, and it reveals, Velma's actually might be prettier than,
Well,
you know what I'm saying? In a more classical way, and so they cut it out because it made the test audiences go, Velma's pretty too. Which was really stupid because she was already pretty anyway. She was just pretty in a nerd way.
yeah. Well, listen, I think we've reached about where we're going to get to that tonight.
Illuminati,
Yeah, I think-
Mountain Witch,
yeah.
and Velma.
Yeah, we reached it out there. We got down into cartoon characters, and I guess that
kids.
I think we see the connections though that I'm trying to make here about how both of these things came over from the old country in Europe and propagated
Catholicism,
through our
red
society through today.
Cliff's connection to cartoons.
Oh, come on.
Do you think that was an Illuminati scam?
To get me
Get a bunch
addicted
of
to
guys
Shira.
attracted to, because like psychology, like you get people into things young, which is where foot fetishes and things like that come from.
Crawling
So you
around
get
on
guys into cartoon characters, you can slowly like aim them towards like bronyism and stuff.
some what?
I'm just playing around.
Bromeism? What's that?
Bronies, like you don't know.
Oh, the ponies. and
Brony,
shit?
yeah, the My Little Pony guys.
Yeah, I only know that from Bob's Burgers. I'd never seen that before.
Oh,
but,
no?
But I have come across furries in real life, and that's always, I mean, whatever you're into, you know. Not one
they're
to,
pretty close. as
not
far as,
one to
like,
kink shame or anything, but it's just kind of strange when you run into it unexpectedly. It's a
What
new-
we mean unexpected, like were they in full gear or were they doing what
Yeah,
they
yeah.
call? I don't know.
running into furries
Like
and
half
gear.
tail
And,
or something like
Yeah.
that. Probably, I was like, what's that mean? He was like, oh, it's when you go with only your ears and your tail. I was like, well, it's full, and the whole thing. I don't get it. I do get it on a psychological level. I do. But,
Personally.
But understanding it, but truly wanting to experience something, it's not the same thing.
yeah.
But I'm really keeping my mind, because I've had a whole lot of abnormal psych, and I try to keep my mind open about all these things that people are just doing and try to observe them. Mm-hmm. Because, like, what the hell's going on out there? You know,
Well, we
It's
all-
gonna get crazier.
We all do a bunch of weird shit or some weird shit that somebody else would think is weird. So I try not to judge anybody else too much on their thing, but then there's some things that are just like, that seems way weirder to me than anything that I do.
Well, I just wonder at what point are we going to start admitting that because I don't want to use the word wrong, because like earlier when we was talking about left versus right hand path, like it's implied that left
the
is
left is
also
wrong,
evil.
yeah.
No, it's solitude and
Right.
darker things. Whereas, like, at what point do we have to admit that we're not okay in the head? Like, I mean, I don't mean to be mean about that, but like, you can look at all of Mother Nature and you see how sexuality goes, and we can say that we've reached a certain point where we don't have to stick to cis norms, and that's fine. The population's booming. Maybe we don't need to make more people, and if you don't want to be a father, you shouldn't be a father, and fill in the blank. But at what point are we going to say that there's something strange going on with human beings where we think we need to be having sex with buildings? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, where there's like whole groups of people that want to lay in a room together and just like pop balloons and stuff. They're called lunars. And my issue with that is I'm not judging these people to say they're doing something wrong.
Do you remember-
My issue is, what are we doing that? Because they can't. I'm worried about the implications. I'm not really worried. I'm wondering what we're doing when. Because that's sexual. It's no longer sex for bumping uglies. Now it's sexual for people to lay in a pile and rub balloons all over each other. And that does the same thing for them. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying, at what point are we going to look at what's going on in society and say, what are human beings turning
It's
into?
different, and what does this mean?
Yeah, we're turning into something. I'm just not sure what it is. And it's just really weird to me that nobody's addressing it. Everybody's just, we would be so accepting and so embracing that I'm wondering at what point some people might get a little bit pissed off that they could have got help. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think
I
that
felt
is.
that way myself. I'm not into balloon rubbing or nothing, but other things.
Well, I think there's a lot of. I don't even. I don't know if you heard that. Dustin said in the cactus play. It was kind of quiet. They're looking a little extreme with it there, though. But I've run across the people who are into weirder stuff than that. And if you are too, well then good for you. As long as you're not hurting anybody, then whatever, do your thing.
Into cactus.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're into cactus, you're definitely hurting somebody.
Email account if you're into cactus. We want to see what you're doing.
Oh yeah. Please don't send your kinks to our Gmail, the Iron Mountain Hour at gmail.com. Please don't send us anything to that. Wink, wink. I can't wink. I'm trying to. There we go.
Never say can't.
Yep. Well, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. But I think we can end that on this note. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you. Hopefully, we'll actually do our news and current events roundup this week because we got a lot of crazy news that I wanted to do Wednesday, but I had to work Thursday morning, so it was too early for me. I had to get up at I can't remember. I think I had to get up 4:00 on Thursday. So I didn't want to do the show Wednesday night, and I forgot until the last minute, and I called Tim at or messaged him at 9:30. I was like, hey man, I'm not going to do the show because I'm about to go to bed. But I appreciate y'all joining us again, and we'll see you this Wednesday night. We're going to be live at 10 o'clock to do news and current events roundup. And thank you again. We'll see you on the next Iron Mountain Hour. Later.